Okay, so Derrick Henry is officially a Baltimore Raven after spending 8 long years with the Tennessee Titans, and during that time period when King Henry ruled the land, the man ran for 2,000 rushing yards, broke countless records, and blessed us all with some of the most iconic highlights ever. But even with Derrick Henry being a demon on the field, the Tennessee Titans never reached the Super Bowl, and outside of one singular season, they never even came close. And as the Titans found themselves at the beginning of a pretty grim rebuilding phase with a whole new regime, what better time to go over how the Derrick Henry experiment in Tennessee failed than right now, and how they took the best running back that we've seen over the past 10 years and put his career through a blender of just horrible draft picks, mismanaged free agents, and more to fail Derrick Henry as a Tennessee Titan. So let's start at the very beginning.
He's in! Patriots win the Super Bowl!
The year is 2016, and on April 29th, Titans fans' lives were about to be changed forever when, after allowing the Rams to trade up to the first overall pick and draft the Goff, they decided to employ the services of the soon-to-be King Henry in the second round. And although the Titans as a team were terrible, only winning 3 games the previous year, this honestly was the perfect situation for Derrick Henry to go into. Tennessee already had a franchise quarterback at the time in Marcus Mariota, and under head coach Mike Mularkey, the Titans were about to shove their trademark exotic smash-mouth run scheme down everyone's throats, and after drafting tackle Jack Conklin 8th overall too, Derrick Henry was set to basically light the NFL on fire in his rookie season. It was all set up perfectly. The man was 22 years old and just won a goddamn Heisman Trophy, and the only other running back in the room the year prior was Antonio Andrews. I don't know who that is either, but Derrick Henry's growth unfortunately took a massive hit because about a month before the draft, the Eagles traded away their disgruntled running back to the Titans, and all of a sudden, DeMarco Murray was in Nashville. Which meant, for the entire 2016 season, Derrick Henry would be nothing more than a sledgehammer up the middle every now and then on an HB dive, while DeMarco Murray got all the flashy plays. But even though the Titans started out hot, in Week 8, DeMarco Murray went down with a foot injury, which should have given Derrick Henry his first real chance, but unfortunately for him, the painkillers exist, and knowing a 6'3", 250-pound behemoth was breathing down his neck, DeMarco Murray was pounding the pills by the bottle, forcing himself to finish the year as a shell of himself earlier in the season on a completely torn plantar plate in his foot. It's sad because we really did miss out on a potentially amazing rookie season. However, for now, the king lay dormant. But that didn't mean the Titans couldn't succeed without him, because remember, they had the future in Marcus Mariota, and at 8-6 going into a Week 16 matchup with the Jacksonville Jaguars, whose record I don't even need to say for you to know how terrible they were, all the Titans needed to do was win the game, and it would be a near certainty to find themselves in the playoffs and get a real chance at becoming. So, not only did they get thoroughly ass-blasted by f***ing Blake Bortles, but Derrick Henry watched as Marcus Mariota snapped his leg in this game, and as time would show, Mariota would never ever be the same player again after this injury, as Tennessee finished the season with a 9-7 record, missing the playoffs. But you know, Derrick Henry, for those final couple of games, was looking pretty damn good. I mean, if you plan on paying attention for the next 40 minutes, you'll notice the gradual increase in his numbers, obviously. But right now, for a 4-game sample size as a part-time running back, 45 yards a game on 4.5 yards per run is promising. And because I'm feeling like getting into my nerd bag here, according to Football Outsiders, their defense-adjusted value per play metrics had Derrick Henry ranked as the 4th most productive running back in the entire NFL. But in the back of his mind, Derrick Henry knew he was good. That was never the issue. The problem was he just didn't have a shot yet, and all he could really do was wait around for his chance to pounce, talking to the media maturely, saying that, in all honesty, it was actually hard for him to transition from being this grim reaper of college football to a backup running back. But it's all a learning process, and 2017 will for surely be his year, or you know, it would be, but DeMarco Murray was still here. DeMarco Murray was not going anywhere, as he would be locked in with the Tennessee Titans until the 2019 season, only going into his second year on a 4-year deal. So that's pretty damn unfortunate for Henry, but at least they had some promise in other positions like wide receiver, where a little-known 5th-round pick from 2016 named Tajay Sharp had a really productive rookie season, and then the Titans general manager, also maybe the antagonist of this video, John Robinson, a guy who it probably just smells like football, drafted Western Michigan wide receiver Corey Davis 5th overall. Seemingly, this was a perfect young wide receiver core to develop to take the attention off of a mobile QB in Mariota and the double rushing attack of Murray and Henry, right? I mean, maybe. It could have worked, but Tajay did not let that plan get past the drawing board, because after watching the 2017 draft at a bar, his head ass beat some random dude heckling him senseless because he was jealous and got injured anyway, missing the entire 2017 season, and his star trajectory was completely derailed. Okay, and then the Titans also badly needed to improve their pass defense because the year prior they allowed the 3rd most passing yards in the league, so they drafted cornerback Adoree Jackson 18th overall in the same draft, who can be labeled as honestly forgettable at best as a Titan. But hey, improvement is improvement, as they finished 2017 only allowing the 7th most passing yards in the league, so they got better, I guess, and come week 1, the young prince continued to see backup snaps as DeMarco Murray held the starting job with an iron fist. But then, in week 2, Henry caught a lucky break. DeMarco Murray couldn't find his pill bottle and was ruled out for the remainder of the game versus the Jaguars, and for just a moment, even if it was a fleeting one, Derrick Henry flashed his potential, running for 92 yards and an Earl Campbell-like touchdown, with Henry being so humble about the whole thing afterwards. I mean, what a class act. And with DeMarco Murray banged up and not practicing, regardless of health, Derrick Henry was set up to be the Titans' lead running back, as the tradition as old as time would play out again, with the old expensive running back passing the torch to the energetic, efficient youngling. Or not. Yeah, DeMarco Murray would not be going down without a fight, because after a 115-yard performance versus Seattle, which admittedly is padded by a 75-yard touchdown run, apparently that one run was enough for head coach Mike Mularkey to keep Derrick Henry in the doghouse for the rest of the season, despite the general public putting 2 and 2 together and saying, hey, maybe instead of forcing our aging running back to drag his carcass back out there every Sunday already injured, maybe let's give Derrick Henry a consistent chance to be something resembling a starter. And the stats said simply, Derrick Henry was a better football player. I mean, look at this. These are the 2 running back stats from the sample size of weeks 6 through 13, where DeMarco Murray averaged 1 more carry than Derrick Henry, but ran for almost 30 less yards. But who cares? Because after week 13, the Titans were 8-4, and were actually a top 10 team in the league. And after losing 3 straight games to make it interesting, because the Tennessee Titans do this stuff, the Titans' situation was simple. Take down the Jacksonville Jaguars in week 17, and because his fate is seemingly tied to the Jaguars, of course, DeMarco Murray would be ruled out for this game, meaning Derrick Henry was now the guy. And not only did Derrick Henry start in this game, but he showed why he should be the Titans' franchise running back, taking a screen pass for 66 yards for the Titans' only touchdown, and they missed the extra point. And although there was some communication error later in the game when Mariota fumbled and the Jags got a touchdown off of that, it's no fun if it's that easy, right? And the Titans barely beat the Jaguars 15-10, finishing the year 9-7. Again, as will be a theme, but the dream scenario for Derrick Henry had come, because not only were the Titans in the playoffs, but DeMarco Murray was still injured too and ruled out for the wild card. You love to see it. It's gonna happen. It's taken a while to get to this point, but Derrick Henry is going to start in a playoff game with a nationally televised audience with a top 5 O-line against a pretty weak Chiefs run defense. And not only did Derrick Henry go out there and have a great game, but he contributed to one of the biggest playoff collapses we've seen in modern NFL history.
Henry ripping through. Henry inside the 20. Henry inside the 5. Touchdown, Tennessee.
They were down 21-3 late in the 3rd quarter, but a combination of a Travis Kelce injury, poor officiating, weird-ass plays, and Derrick Henry's schlong proved to be far too much. But once again, God damn it, Tennessee. With the game iced, Derrick Henry almost coughed up the crown to lose the game, but Thank God he didn't. He was ruled down, and Derrick Henry's career-high 156-yard performance proved that not only was he that guy, but the Tennessee Titans were a team to be feared in the AFC.
Back of the end zone. Running back with the handle. Pass to the end zone, and it is caught.
Thomas, come on. That wasn't very polite. They're still learning how to walk. Was a 35 whopper really necessary? And although, trust me, Tom was magnificent out there, Bill Belichick completely eradicated the old-school, hard-nosed, pure, red-blooded American running style of Mike Mularkey's Tennessee Titans, as Sheev contained Derrick Henry, with him only managing 28 yards, getting taken out of the game script entirely, while Mariota was sacked 8 times. But don't worry, our protagonist will remember this beatdown, because, as the wise shaman Jay Cutler once said, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts, and in time, the promised king would get another chance at balancing the state of the galaxy. However, that's not for a while, and in his quest of even earning the right to challenge Thomas Edward Patrick Brady, Henry and the Titans made the Chiefs draw blood, killing what they thought was the raid boss in Alex Smith, but unfortunately, that was the exact ritual requirement to birth a much larger evil later on. But who cares, because in the present, everything seemed to be coming together for Derrick. The biggest fear for the Titans going into the offseason was just because they squeaked into the playoffs, they would keep their coaching staff around. But Tennessee showed some competent signs by replacing everyone, getting a new head coach for the future in Mike Vrabel, a new offensive coordinator in Matt LaFleur, and a defensive coordinator in Dean Pease. And I'm not joking, that's his actual name, but trust me, they all knew what they were doing. Anyways, a majority of the people were happy with these new hires, and Vrabel's newfound intensity was nice, but another camp thought that the Titans were falling for the same traps so many organizations had fallen for already, and that was trying to copy the Patriots, because last year they signed Logan Ryan, and now they brought in Vrabel, a former player, and their two biggest signings were both Patriots in Malcolm Butler and Dion Lewis. They signed another f***ing running back. So, not only were they probably just tossing money at hollow corpses and former Belichick players, but Derrick Henry's talents would be bottled up again, as the Titans made it clear that Henry and Dion Lewis would be splitting carries almost 50-50, with DeMarco Murray announcing his retirement. But most people still knew the talent Derrick Henry had, and the King went into 2018 as one of the most underrated running backs in the league and a fantasy sleeper for many, as a lot of people expected the man to continue his momentum from the end of the 2017 season into the next campaign, and one madman said that Derrick Henry could eventually run for 2,000 yards in a season. I mean, what a moron! So week 1 was here, and the Derrick Henry coming out party seemed inevitable. God himself could only hold off the King's wrath for so long, right? Well, edge a little longer, because what we got was an astronomical disaster. In week 1, Derrick Henry was having a bad game, but he made up for it and more with a 62-yard touchdown run, which was called back because Delanie Walker was called for a holding, and then later on, Delanie Walker again, the 34-year-old tight end, who's also been their only good offensive player outside of 1/8 of Corey Davis sometimes, fractured his ankle and would miss the rest of the season. The Titans lost the game, Marcus Mariota also got hurt, and Derrick Henry, in his insanely hyped up first ever week 1 start, ran for 26 yards and was pissed with his own performance after the game too, and sadly, things just kept getting worse. Maybe, just maybe, we all had expectations a little too high for Derrick Henry. I mean, he's shown flashes in the past, but in reality, an old-school running back just might not work in the modern age. Gone were the days of big burly men like Larry Zonka and Jerome Bettis running dudes over in the way Henry does, and unless you have an elusive pass-catching back like Christian McCaffrey or Saquon Barkley, you just can't stay on the field consistently, and a franchise running back is impossible otherwise. And this change in philosophy, partly due to Matt LaFleur's schemes and Henry's just poor play in general, led to just under 40 yards a game for Derrick Henry from weeks 1 through 7. And in an ever-important Week 9 AFC battle with the Chargers before their bye week, also right before the trade deadline, the Tennessee Titans made it known that one guy would come out of this bloodbath as the lead back between Dion Lewis and Derrick Henry, and the other, well, the business side of the NFL will take its course. The Titans ended up losing the game versus the Chargers 19-20, but Dion Lewis just thoroughly, efficiently, and emotionally outplayed Derrick Henry on every possible level, and I don't care if you were the biggest Derrick Henry supporter in the world, it couldn't be denied any longer from the film. If Dion Lewis was making plays like this, what value did Derrick Henry even have to this team besides HB dives on the 2-yard line? And in the Chargers game, on the 2-yard line, they elected to put Dion Lewis in the game and gave him goal line carries, which really made the message clear. And with the trade deadline just around the corner, GM John Robinson knew exactly what he had to do. The public opinion was set. Dion Lewis is a 3-down running back, and Derrick Henry had his moments for sure, but overall was a failed experiment. And the Titans publicly said Derrick Henry is available to trade for. But guess what? Nobody even wanted him. Not one NFL team that called the Titans were willing to give up whatever they were asking for in return, which I can't imagine was more than a 4th-round pick, and after making it known they wanted Henry gone, he stayed and remained a Tennessee Titan, partly because he was that useless in the eyes of other NFL teams. What a roller coaster. But whatever, Derrick Henry's staying, I guess, and to his credit, Henry took accountability, basically saying, you know, I probably should have been traded. I've been inefficient and I need to play better. Which is not easy to say when your boss literally tried to fire you but couldn't because nobody else would hire you. However, going forward, the Titans started to experiment a little bit more with Derrick Henry. Earlier in the season, they ran the Wildcat sometimes, and as they used it more, turns out a 6'3" guy is a lethal Wildcat player. And not only is he great at that, but his punishing style of running is perfect for closing out games in December and January as well. So maybe the King did have more value than just being a battering ram down the paint on 1st and goal. And little by little, Derrick Henry seemed to continue to earn more respect from Mike Vrabel at least, and combining that with the fact that Dion Lewis was just not that good at football, Henry started to pick up more and more momentum until it happened. From the lowest point a player can really be at just a few weeks earlier, on December 6th, 2018, the Tennessee Titans played against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and on Thursday Night Football, Derrick Henry, the running back who once had the crown, lost it, and now was beginning to pick it up again, finally found himself as worthy as he slapped that crown on and officially became the ruler of the Jacksonville Jaguars organization.
Stays in bounds. He might go 99 yards for the touchdown.
Derrick Henry, are you kidding me? 238 yards on the ground alone and 4 touchdowns on just 17 carries. 17. The motherfucker broke like 9 records, ran for a 99-yard touchdown, and the Titans won the game in a complete demolishment of Jacksonville. And instead of getting all cocky and saying, oh, I'm him, I told you so, Derrick Henry continued to stay humble, saying, you know, I played all right. There were probably a couple of runs I could have read better, and I'm glad I was just able to help the team and get better every week. And it was reported that Vrabel wanted to have Henry go for even more yards later on in the game, but Derrick Henry himself insisted that Dion Lewis go in the game just so he could feed off the sorry-ass Jaguars defense as well. First of all, the Jaguars are an anomaly of a professional sports organization to be respected that little, but also, Derrick Henry was now here. It took a few years, but finally, the NFL world would be introduced to the new dictator of running backs, as he finished the 2018 season from weeks 14 through 17, running for almost 150 yards per game. Keep in mind, the Titans tried to trade this man a few weeks before, and now he was carrying the team on his back, pairing those monster stats alongside 22 carries and almost 2 touchdowns a game. This is MVP type shit. The only issue was the rest of the Titans team was up and down, being very nice, and Henry's biggest issue getting in the way of his carry job was Marcus Mariota's play, because he definitely was not good in 2018. And before the final game of the season that could have clinched a playoff spot, he was ruled out with a foot tear in week 17, which left Blaine Gabbert to go against Andrew Luck and the Colts in a do-or-die game, and yeah, the Titans died. But going back to the quarterback situation, okay, Marcus Mariota was awful this season, throwing for only 11 touchdowns in the year, the same amount as Bryce Young, so, you know, do with that what you will, but Christ, man. Mariota was a walking science experiment all season long. It was ridiculous how many injuries he had. Week 1, he got diagnosed with an elbow injury, like I said, but played through it despite it never healing. He then got a concussion mid-season. In week 13, he sustained an abdomen injury. Week 14, he got a right hand injury. And then in week 17, dude got a neck injury too, along with the foot injury that would rule him out for just his second game missed of the entire season. All those injuries, and dude really only missed 2 games. Mercy. How Mike Vrabel wasn't put on trial for violating the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is beyond me, but still, I think the Titans front office handled the 2019 offseason pretty damn well. They told Mariota that he would still be the franchise quarterback, but also lit a little fire under his ass by trading for another mentally destroyed quarterback in Ryan Tannehill, hoping that would give Mariota a little more incentive to not just, lose his job, which is pretty damn manipulative, given that you could pretty much make a sound argument that the Titans ruined Mariota's career by itself. So, Derrick Henry's quarterback situation was definitely not ideal, but the NFL draft brought in 2 of the best Titans players of the last 5 years, as with their first-round pick, they took the troubled but talented defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons to go alongside Jarrell Casey, and in the second round, they drafted Mississippi's A.J. Brown to pair with Corey Davis and I guess Delaney Walker, who was still legally alive at this point in the timeline. So with that, coming off of another 9-7 season, the Titans' expectations were the exact same thing as always. They were going to be mid at best if Mariota can be average again, but for Derrick Henry, he had a chance to really do something special in 2019. With Matt LaFleur gone to Green Bay, the Titans would promote Arthur Smith to become their offensive coordinator, who made it obvious he wanted to run the hell out of the football and was willing to give Henry the same work he was getting as the 2018 season ended. Add that onto a coach who already loves him in Mike Vrabel and is willing to do anything for a Super Bowl, and it seemed like his route to becoming a consistent elite running back was simple. All he's got to do is show that those years behind DeMarco Murray and Dion Lewis were horrible mistakes, and he's been growing, getting better, studying, watching film, and building muscle behind the scenes. And to his credit, Henry did go out there and do it. But here's the tragedy of Derrick Henry early on in 2019. His team was f***ing awful. In the beginning, despite Taylor Lewan, arguably their best lineman, getting suspended for the first 4 games, Derrick Henry was very good. But, he was mortal, I will admit, through the first 6 weeks, averaging about 70 yards per game on 20 carries. But in week 6, Derrick Henry maybe was starting to falter a little bit. He only ran for 28 yards, mainly because him and Marcus Mariota just got swallowed whole by their own offensive line, and after throwing 2 picks and getting sacked 3 times, the Titans benched Marcus Mariota for Ryan Tannehill, who in limited time also got sacked 4 times, and the Titans lost to the Broncos legend himself, Joe Flacco, 16-0. Yikes. The unraveling of the Titans seemed to be written and sprayed all over the wall. Unless Ryan Tannehill, a certified bust, could revive this team from the scrap pile, it was over. And although he was playing efficient, boring football at a 4-5 record going into a death sentence with the Patrick Mahomes-led Chiefs, the Tennessee Titans were absolutely cooked. Derrick Henry was still barely averaging over 70 yards per game and was missing that big playability he had become so known for even at his size. And versus the seemingly next dynasty in the NFL, Patrick Mahomes just climaxed all over the place. A near 450-yard performance and 3 touchdowns with no picks was just, it was vintage Patrick Mahomes. But they lost. They actually lost the game even with Mahomes doing that. If it's even possible, but dare I say, Derrick Henry actually was the best player on grass this game, running for 188 yards, including a near 70-yard touchdown. And finally, Henry had a quarterback that could take the pressure off him from time to time, and a true alpha wide receiver 1 that demanded double coverage in A.J. Brown. And after beating the Chiefs off of the performance of Henry Tannehill and the Chiefs' special teams goofing, the Titans rested for a week, and the rest of the NFL proceeded to watch in horror as Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, and the rest of the team continued to get better and better. By week 14, the Titans had won 4 games in a row, and Derrick Henry, Derrick motherfucking Henry, the king in the flesh, was having statistically one of the greatest running back stretches in NFL history. The criticisms of Arthur Smith's offense all turned to dust, as more specifically, from weeks 10 through 13, also you should know the Titans had a bye in week 11, Derrick Henry ran for 188 yards, then 159 yards, and then 149 yards. This is f***ing absurd already. I mean, that's 165 yards per game for one man, and Henry ran for more yards in a 3-game stretch than any running back since Adrian Peterson did it in 2012 when he won the goddamn MVP award. So you know Derrick Henry was pretty good, but A.J. Brown and Ryan Tannehill were also both going ballistic, setting records of their own, and the defense for Tennessee was scary too. Kevin Byard, Jarrell Casey, Malcolm Butler, Kenny Vaccaro, those boys were hitting, and on offense too. And Derrick Henry led the reborn Tennessee Titans to clinch the playoffs with a 9-7 record. Again. Which meant, because Deshaun Watson was once good at football, the Titans didn't even win their division, and they now had to go on the road to play against the New England Patriots, where, finally, it was time, after a long wait. Derrick Henry had grown stronger and stronger, and now he was finally ready to take on the challenge that defeated him in the past, and this time, instead of being alone, he would be coming with an entire legion behind him. Could it really be done? The Evil Empire had been the best defense in the NFL at the time, and although they were old, beaten, and bruised, there was no reason why the Patriots wouldn't be able to neutralize Derrick Henry again. But this isn't the same Derrick Henry anymore. Like I said, he's got help. He's got an O-line. It's January. He's got a quarterback, and in the end, it would be none other than King Henry who freed us all off the back of 34 carries, the most in any playoff game since 2006. Derrick Henry converted that into 204 total yards and a touchdown as he played his role to absolute perfection. Tannehill only completed 8 passes all day too, and Vrabel and Arthur Smith decided to just slam Henry over and over and over again. And by the time the fourth quarter came along, tackling the king was just not gonna happen. He was falling forward for 5 yards every single time, bare minimum. And after there was no score for the entire third and fourth quarters, a half where Titans all-pro punter Brett Kern was possibly the most valuable player in the field, you know what happens next. Thomas Brady's pass is picked off for a touchdown, and Mike Vrabel, for now, keeps his penis, and the Titans won the game 20-13. The legend of Derrick Henry was growing more and more by the second. His sickle of blood that was dripping with souls wanted more, and nobody wanted smoke from King Henry right now, except apparently the Baltimore Ravens.
And guys didn't seem like they was too interested in tackling him, so our mindset is a little different.
Good shit, Earl.
The Ravens were, at worst, a top 2 team for the entire regular season, and led by the MVP Lamar Jackson, a blowout was expected to happen, and that's actually what took place, as the Tennessee Titans manhandled Baltimore from the first snap to the last. Derrick Henry was throwing touchdowns, Lamar Jackson was completely bottled up, and when the final whistle was blown, this game was close for maybe 10 minutes total, and Derrick Lamar Henry Jr. ran for 195 rushing yards. 195! A week after going for 182. Do you understand how historic this was? Tannehill completed under 10 passes again, and the Titans, who were an afterthought earlier this season, carried by King Henry and his comical 188 yards per game in the playoffs, took down Tom Brady and then Lamar Jackson, 28-12, back-to-back. However, it would have been a beautiful story for this Titans team to go on to win the Super Bowl or something like that, but going into the AFC Championship against the Kansas City Chiefs, it was just the wrong place at the wrong time for the Titans, as Mahomes' touchdown run sucked all the life out of Tennessee, and in all honesty, the team just looked tired. 2 road playoff games back-to-back and over 60 carries for Derrick Henry in 2 games started to weigh on the team as a whole, and the Titans' magical Cinderella run ended with a 24-35 loss at Arrowhead in a game that wasn't as close as the score indicates. An upsetting loss for sure, but in terms of an AFC Championship defeat, this is probably the least upset you can really be with your team, because the Chiefs would go on to win the Super Bowl, and the Titans walked away from this playoff run with a franchise player, and his name is Derrick Henry, and at his best, he is the best running back in the NFL. So instead of trying to build a competent team around him, they now needed to build more talent on top of what they had and contend for a Super Bowl. And yes, in just year number 1, things started to go horribly. So they started off the offseason of 2020 by locking up Ryan Tannehill with, at the time, just, I'm gonna be honest with you, way too much money. But to be fair, I guess, Tennessee will never be a free agency destination, so it could be argued they had to overpay. And for the King, interestingly, although he may be immortal for now, he is still a running back, so Derrick Henry only got the franchise tag, while the Titans focused on bringing in more free agents to reload for another deep playoff run. And surely, guys like Vic Beasley, and 36-year-old Jonathan Joseph and Jadeveon Clowney on a 1-year deal will help out immensely, right? No, they fucking didn't. Overall, John Robinson has been a very solid GM, but this offseason was easily his worst to date, and at the worst time too, because not only did he bring in nothing but cannon fodder in the offseason, but they also traded away their best franchise player in the 2010s, Jurrell Casey, their 5-time Pro Bowl defensive tackle, for a 7th-round pick. Yeah, in the words of Casey himself, they threw their most loyal player away like a piece of trash, and more guys left Tennessee too. Marcus Mariota was gone, and their former All-Pro tackle Jack Conklin also left, but don't worry, don't worry, because they knew they had a replacement. They had their eye on an even better, younger player at the same position Jack used to play, and in the 2020 NFL draft, Mike Vrabel, assisted by the great Frozone and some guy taking a shit, the Titans drafted tackle Isaiah Wilson, their first of many blunders to try and assist the King. So yeah, can't wait to see how this young promising man develops now that he can finally live out his dream in the NFL. And the Titans began the 2020 season not getting better whatsoever, and 3 days before their first game in 2020, Isaiah Wilson, who already got caught partying, got arrested for driving drunk, and then after being released on bail, spent the next month on the COVID list and just didn't play at all. Poggers. But still being led by Henry, A.J. Brown, Ryan Tannehill sometimes, and a good defense, the Titans came out of the gate on fire. Even with Vegas pretty much predicting another 9-7 campaign from them, Derrick Henry heard all the rumors and everyone saying the Titans were going to be the same old Titans, and went out and had the single greatest pure rushing season we've seen since Adrian Peterson. Through 5 weeks, the Tennessee Titans were the best team in football. And this was with a ton of players on the COVID list too, but Derrick Henry was just simply too good, having the most efficient performance of his career since his Jaguars breakout game during an overtime duel with the Texans on just 24 touches, which he turned into 264 scrimmage yards. I mean, Christ, the guy was averaging 10 yards per carry. But then the Titans did begin to struggle, mainly because the defense that was predicted to be elite was getting steamed and hammed, finishing the regular season allowing the 2nd most pass attempts, 4th most passing yards, and 2nd most passing touchdowns. And their weak defense overall reared itself in the most important game of the season at the time, when in Week 16, at 10-4, they needed a win versus the Packers to clinch the playoffs, and instead they allowed Aaron Rodgers to throw for 4 touchdowns and 4 incompletions, as they lost the game 40-14. And it became clear that even though at one point they were, the Tennessee Titans were no longer real contenders in the AFC. But once again, need I remind you, this team, this entire organization, thrives off the raw willpower of Derrick Henry and his unparalleled ability to snatch manhoods like trophies. And even with Taylor Lewan being out for the season since Week 7, the Titans were able to win the AFC South on a last-second field goal despite allowing 38 points. So yeah, they won the game. That was all great, and they were in the playoffs now. But just one more thing before we move on. Guess who was the main reason why they were even in the playoffs in the first place and how they were able to take down the Texans? That's right. If it weren't for the ever-reliable Jonnu Smith catching one pass for 8 yards, the Titans would have lost to Houston, and Derrick Henry also chipped in too with a light 250-yard performance, his career high to this day, so just king. But there would be no time to rest, because as division winners, they would play against the Baltimore Ravens in the wild card, but this time on their own turf. So it was imperative to lock in and prepare for another battle between the king and the former MVP. 3 days! 3 days before their playoff game, guess whose ass got arrested? The first round gem that was Isaiah Wilson found himself in a GTA car chase with the police, and after busting it open at 140 miles per hour, dude got caught by the fuzz anyways and was arrested on like 8 charges, pretty much ending his NFL career right there on the spot. So with that happening, the Titans pretty much dug their own graves versus Baltimore even before it started, also deciding that, hey, we beat them last year, so that gives us the right to stomp all over their logo and pop a few Fortnite dances just for good measure, right? Well, it turns out the Ravens weren't huge fans of that. But if the Titans actually backed up their antics with their play on the field, then so be it. They did not. Even though they held a 10-0 lead and Lamar began using the football as a choking hazard, as is tradition, the Ravens bet on Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters to be able to beat A.J. Brown one-on-one for most of the game with Corey Davis sidelined, while the rest of the defense focused on Derrick Henry, showing little respect to Ryan Tannehill, literally putting 9 guys in the box routinely. And being the football pioneer he is, Arthur Smith studied intently, analyzing what the Ravens were doing, and came up with a masterful conclusion that the only way to counter this, where they're stacking the box all the time, this advanced defense could be defeated with more HB dives. Add Arthur Smith's usual shenanigans onto 2 very conservative 4th down punts by Vrabel, and that's how the Baltimore Ravens were able to confidently stomp all over the Titans logo themselves as they contained the king and his men 20-13, sending the Titans home in just the first round. By year's end, Derrick Henry's regular season stats were near mythical though. Not only did the king log a 2,000-yard rushing season, ending it off with a 250 bomb, something only 7 other humans have ever done, but the man's durability was just fictional. In 2020, Josh Jacobs was 3rd in the league in rush attempts with 273, but Derrick Henry carried the ball 105 more times than Jacobs did, averaging 126 yards per game. Are you serious? I can't stress enough to you that Derrick Henry during this time period was just a generational player, and Tennessee could not let another draft like 2020 happen ever again if they wanted to win anything. And so, after losing to their new hated rivals in Baltimore, it was time for John Robinson to put on the hairnet and cook up one of the most abominable meals ever evoked again. I don't know how, but this man's talents as a GM just went to complete when it mattered most. Their free agent signings weren't terrible, I guess. They were actually pretty solid. Denico Autry has been very impactful for them, and they traded for Julio Jones as well, who wasn't very good or healthy when he was with the Titans, but at least he helped boost A.J. Brown's sex drive a little bit behind closed doors, so that's a positive. But everything really just depended on the draft. Now that he who shall not be named anymore was traded for a 7th round pick, which was honestly incredible value, to be honest with you. In the 2021 NFL Draft, John Robinson and his team drafted Virginia Tech cornerback Caleb Farley. And I'm going to be 100% honest with you, I don't really know how to fairly judge this pick. Coming into the NFL, Caleb Farley had known back problems, which is part of the reason why he was the 22nd pick in the first place, and in just his rookie season, Farley tore his ACL, which knocked him out for the year, and then later on, he re-aggravated his back injury, which caused him to miss even more time. And the most tragic part about Farley's entire career so far is things were just so much worse for him off the field, too. I mean, the shit he's gone through has been the worst possible situation anyone can imagine. He lost his mom in 2019 to cancer, and his father a few months ago after a gas explosion took his life. So, although Farley's play has been lackluster, I mean, this isn't really about football anymore. It'd be f***ed up if I called the man a bust when his main focus for the last 5 years of his life has been his mental health, and I wish him nothing but the best in the future. However, to get back to John Robinson being an absolute log, the rest of the 2021 NFL Draft also, like the 2020 Draft, produced almost nothing of note, okay? Out of all of these other guys, the best player here for Tennessee is probably second-rounder Dillon Radunz, who exists, I guess, and now the Titans entered the 6th season of Derrick Henry's career, getting slightly worse again, and praying that the talent that's been on the roster for 3 years now can keep their back sturdy for yet another carry job. To start the 2021 season, Henry got a bag, but also Arthur Smith was now in Atlanta, and replaced with offensive coordinator Todd Downing, who would also be equally, if not more, criticized, and when the season began, it was classic Tennessee Titans football as usual, getting a near 40-piece hung on them by the Cardinals in Week 1, and then would have lost in Week 2 as well if Derrick Henry didn't drop another masterclass 237 scrimmage yard and 3 touchdown performance versus the Seahawks, but he did, and in Week 4, however, the Titans ended up falling to the Zach Wilson, Corey Davis-led New York Jets, and at 2-2, it can't get worse than losing to the Jets. Surely not, right? Yeah, no, it can't. The lowest point the bar can really be at is a loss to the Jets. So, immediately, the Titans started looking like their old selves, and the reason for this resurgence was Derrick Henry getting fed more and producing more. It's not fair. Analytics bend around this man's skill set. From weeks 2 through 7, the King was averaging near 30 carries per game and converting that into 135 yards per game. And people just took this for granted. Nobody could tackle him. The Titans' O-line was better than ever, and Tennessee looked like the best team they've had under Derrick Henry ever. And then, sadly, there was an assassination attempt on the King's very life. In said Week 8 game versus the Indianapolis Colts, Derrick Henry broke his foot and suffered a Jones fracture, which would knock him out for a minimum of 8 weeks, meaning the King would miss the rest of the regular season, doing everything he could to recover for a playoff run, but without him, there was no way the Titans were going to be able to keep up their pace. Except they did. In a shocking development, the Titans kept shooting up the power rankings week after week, and instead of being a bully ball, power run team at heart, the Titans' identity shifted to a knock-your-ass-on-the-ground defensive team, and led by Kevin Byard, Jeffrey Simmons, and others, the Titans held the ship down and awaited the prophesized King's return as the Titans not only made the playoffs, but they came home with the number 1 seed in the entire AFC, meaning they would have home field advantage throughout the whole AFC playoffs. And on top of that, they also bought another week of recovery for Derrick Henry to heal from his wounds. Now, the narrative around this Titans team at the time was this may be the weakest 1 seed ever, but all the Titans had to do to get rid of that was to prove they could win without Derrick Henry in the playoffs, because although Henry would be active for their divisional round matchup with Joe Burrow's Cincinnati Bengals, he knew, the coaches knew, and eventually everyone else knew he just wasn't anywhere near 100%, so other guys were going to have to carry more weight with a hobbled King under center. But I mean, they still had the coach of the year in Mike Vrabel and a truly amazing defense, so even though this team was extremely vulnerable and unhealthy, they were favored to take care of business, and the defense for Tennessee did everything in their power to win this game. Everything. I gotta give all the credit in the world to Jeffrey Simmons, Danico Autry, Harold Landry, and the whole fucking defense, because they really did try. But this goddamn troglodyte decided to revert back into Dolphins form at the worst possible fucking time. Ryan Tannehill, who statistically has always been underrated, and I will die on the hill that in the regular season, Ryan was never really appreciated enough for coming up in big moments, but in this one playoff game for Cincinnati, his stat line of 220 yards and 3 picks it was unacceptable. Tennessee's defense got 9 sacks on Joe Burrow, tying an NFL record, and allowed a singular touchdown all day long. And the offense saw the defense's performance and just tossed it away. And so, this 12-win Titans team was sent home in their first playoff game as Derrick Henry walked off the field, giving a valiant effort in the battle, still injured mind you, thinking to himself, what if? And maybe, just maybe, his best chance at a Super Bowl in Tennessee just slipped right through the team's hands right then and there. Alright, if you think the Titans have been f***ing up their transactions recently, well, you you haven't bared witness to John Robinson's full form yet. I still don't know what happened to the man's ability to get talent, but it's long gone at this point. I don't know. Maybe he developed a crippling glue addiction? Who knows? Because for some reason, the Titans and their best wide receiver they've had maybe ever in A.J. Brown couldn't, quote, bridge the gap. They couldn't bridge the gap. John Robinson must have offered his input and said, you know what? Fuck it. I got a guy I've been wanting in the draft, so let's trade A.J. Brown to the Eagles, and I got a plan, okay? We're going to get the 18th overall pick, and the guy we are going to draft is going to be wide receiver Treylon Burks, the future of the Tennessee Titans wide receiver core. Let me just ask you a question, okay? Off the top of your head, do you think Treylon Burks has started 16 games in his career? No, he hasn't. And I know he's had injury issues, but honestly, he's just not very talented either. And it's now been 3 years since Derrick Henry broke out. 3 years. And in 3 straight drafts, John Robinson has he's thrown it in the trash, thrown these drafts away. And if he had gone back in time trying to throw the draft, the Titans could not have possibly made a worse selection. It's truly abhorrent what John Robinson did with this art project he was doing so well on. And he polished off the rest of the 2022 draft class by taking Malik Willis, an excellent scout team guy to prepare for Lamar Jackson, and got an exciting running back prospect in Hassan Haskins, who will maybe become Derrick Henry's successor, so I'm excited to see how he develops in Tennessee. The Titans also didn't bring in anyone new either. They retained both center Ben Jones and linebacker Harold Landry, but they were just missing that spark player next to Derrick Henry, who, by the way, I'll just point out, was on pace for another 2,000-yard season. If he had stayed healthy and logged just one 200-yard performance or something like that during 2021, not only would the Titans be a completely different team, but Derrick Henry would have become the first player in modern NFL history to go for 2,000 yards in back-to-back seasons. Could you imagine if that happened? So this was it. This was the last chance the Titans had with Derrick Henry in his dominant form. And although there were questions about could Derrick Henry really be his old self again, although I would say he's never really returned to his 2020 form, he definitely was very, very good in 2022. So don't worry, the king had not become complacent on the throne. But without A.J. Brown, he had to do a lot more heavy lifting. And because of the unprecedented amount of injuries this Titans team had, Tennessee had games like a Week 8 battle versus Houston where Ryan Tannehill was out and Derrick Henry had to deal with having Malik Willis at quarterback, turning in another vintage King Henry performance, going for well over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns in a win. And despite their limitations, the Titans just kept on rolling, and after decimating the Packers in Week 11, Tennessee was pretty much considered a bona fide Super Bowl contender yet again. But then the foundation of the castle that hadn't been improved upon for 3 straight years began to crumble. By year's end, the Titans, like I said, had far and away the most injuries out of any team in the league. Tannehill missed games throughout the season, and then was ruled out for the year by Week 15. Treylon Burks missed games, Taylor Lewan and Harold Landry missed most of the year too, and that's how, despite Derrick Henry still leading his men into battle to the best of his God-given abilities, the Tennessee Titans went into Week 18 versus the Jacksonville Jaguars in another do-or-die playoff scenario with Josh Dobbs at quarterback and Robert Woods as the team's wide receiver 1. And after a fumble return for a touchdown, the Tennessee Titans missed the playoffs for the first time since 2018 as the Titans lost their final 7 games in a row. And even though that was just an outstanding collapse, I skipped over the funniest part from the Titans season, and that came in Week 13, when the Titans traveled to Philadelphia to take on A.J. Brown's Eagles, and it did not go well, okay? A.J. Brown had a revenge game and went for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, but after the game, in response to seeing in person that A.J. Brown was, in fact, still good, it had to be done. John Robinson was fired by ownership for committing war crimes of the highest magnitude and for blatant treason against the king for ever even considering to get rid of A.J. Brown and botching 3 drafts in a row. And with all of that going down, Derrick Henry somehow, at the age of 29, was still beyond elite. Given the last ranked offensive line in 2022, Henry still ran for 1,500 yards, good for second most in the NFL, but after signing almost nobody of note, nothing at all in the draft, bad injury luck and horrible treatment of the talented players they have already had, Derrick Henry was pretty much the only man left standing, and in 2023, the Titans' expectations were bottom 10 at best, so a Super Bowl was actually just off the table. They picked up the remnants of what was once DeAndre Hopkins, lost Jim Schwartz, their senior defensive assistant, to the Browns, and after rumors circled about the Titans trying to possibly trade Derrick Henry, any plan to replace the King before the season with Hassan Haskins blew up in their face when Haskins was arrested for an NFL classic, good old-fashioned fucking sexual assault. Awesome. So at this point, it was too little too late. The 2023 Tennessee Titans were a bad football team, and this offense quarterbacked by half Ryan Tannehill, half Will Levis was so bad that you had teams' defensive game plans that revolved entirely around containing Derrick Henry. I mean, the Dolphins had the three motherfuckers rule, where every time Henry even gets close to the ball, three guys in the box need to be ready to hit him, and by season's end, Kevin Byard was traded to Philly, the secondary was a disaster, and the offense was one of, if not the worst in the entire NFL. And the Titans finished the 2023 season not even coming close to the playoffs with a 6-11 record. And this season truly was the end of an era. Mike Vrabel was fired, Ryan Tannehill is gone, and the King, Derrick Henry, made it known with a speech to Titans fans that he too would be gone. He couldn't win in Tennessee with the core that was in place, and carrying on a depressing tradition for Titans fans where their best player seems to always go to Baltimore, a team that has become one of their biggest rivals in recent years, Derrick Henry signed a 2-year deal with the Baltimore Ravens, teaming up with Lamar Jackson to potentially form the most dangerous QB running back duo in the entire league. Derrick Henry will be successful with the Ravens, but just how successful remains to be seen. However, that speed burst that Derrick Henry had in 2020 when he got injured was lost and has never really returned. So he's still a good player, but his prime as an all-time great running back is over. And at the age of 30, I doubt it's ever going to return to him. But for 5 straight seasons, the Tennessee Titans had so many chances to build something around Henry. And after doing a solid job early on, 3 years in a row of acquiring almost nobody of note left King Henry's forces barren. And outside of one magical 2019 playoff run, disappointment was all the Titans knew, and the organization as a whole completely failed to capitalize on the rare talents of a true NFL legend. Anyways, if you like this video, subscribe, because I got a lot of videos on the channel just like this one. And if you did like this video, I recommend watching this little documentary thing I did on the Cleveland Browns and their quarterback misery since 1999. It's 2 hours long, but it's pretty good, trust me. And thanks to all my Patrons for pledging $1. It does mean a lot. And anyways, until next time.